Welcome to the Proverbs Daily Devotional. Today we're going to get into a subject of Proverbs about controlling our anger. Let's get right into it. Proverbs 14:29 says, "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." The subject of anger is really all over the book of Proverbs. Much of the writings doesn't just talk about having too much anger, but having control in doing it for the right reasons. Our society often thinks of anger as being dangerous, but anger itself isn't dangerous. It's the lack of control of it. The Proverbs gives us insight on anger and its proper role. This verse uses the word patient, which is from Hebrew long-suffering or long patience, indicating that they don't get angry quickly. It is this person that has great understanding. And I want to make this clear. The patient person doesn't bottle up their anger only to explode at some point. It's not healthy and certainly doesn't show control. Understanding comes from the person that is willing to have the patience to see what an appropriate response would be to a situation. Understanding comes when we ask important questions as to what made us angry in the first place about this situation. Did I take an offense to something that was said? Could I have taken something the wrong way? What did someone do to make me angry? And are there other circumstances to consider? Considering the variables to the situation and the answers to those questions above, will give us the insight to our proper response. It doesn't mean that we don't ever get angry. It simply means we consider the complete situation at hand. By doing so, we have given the other party the same consideration that we would want if it was reversed. By jumping into anger, it can create confusion and even misunderstandings, which only displays folly, which could make the situation even much more difficult to resolve. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." The Hebrew word for wrath, it also refers to heat. So it's easy to see the danger of heat and the uncontrolled anger of wrath. Remember from the first Proverbs that we read that a quick-tempered person displays folly. So the wise person will respond with a gentle answer. That doesn't always mean that folly will return in kind. And so it's prudent to remember that we should maybe be prepared for folly to continue on the other party or from the other party by them being angry. Jesus displayed a righteous and controlled anger as he drove out money changers from the temple in Matthew chapter 21, verses 12 and 13. In another instance, Jesus in Mark 3, 1 through 5, when questioned about healing on the Sabbath, says he looked around them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. He went ahead and healed the man and then left the area. Having controlled anger is better by far than pouring more fuel on the fire with harsh words. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 33 says, "For as churning cream produces butter, and as twisting nose produces blood, so stirring up anger produces strife." This proverb gives us some good imagery. It's also important to see that the result of stirring up anger is just more strife. The Hebrew word from strife also refers to lawsuits. So stirring up anger often turns others, and sometimes even our friends, into adversaries. Intentionally stirring up anger. It is disrespectful to intentionally anger people. It tempts them to lose control of their will and good decision making to the passion of anger. Provoking people to anger is simply a bad attitude to have, and it escalates a situation unnecessarily. We can all see how children and siblings like to press each other's buttons. When we grow up, we should learn that doing that is selfish and just causes frustration. Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11, "When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me." We need to put some childish behaviors behind us and quit doing those things that cause such pain. A further thing we can do is to try to wiggle out of a situation by saying, "I was just joking around." Proverb even speaks to this. Proverbs 26, 18 and 19, "Like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death is one who deceives their neighbor and says, 'I was only joking.'" How many times have we seen that played out? The wise men writing Proverbs saw that even thousands of years ago, people got into situations and then to avoid the consequences of lying and deceit, they claimed that they were just joking around. In reality, it's often just an attempt to cover up their deception and lies. And even if it isn't their intent to hurt others like that, like the person was really joking, it is extremely dangerous and reckless. It's like lighting matches around a gas pump. As the verse says, a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death. Proverbs 10:10 says, "Whoever winks maliciously causes grief, and a chattering fool comes to ruin." This is another proverb that shows the importance of controlled and justified anger. If we are unable to muster justified anger when the situation warrants, can be as much of a problem as uncontrolled anger. In our society of people-pleasing attitudes, we can neglect to have justified anger when it's called for, such as when an injustice is being done. We can get so concerned about being politically correct and trying to avoid ruffling feathers, we can often avoid boldly showing the truth of what God demands of us as a society and us as individuals. When we are presented with an injustice or bad behavior, it seems easier to just give it a wink, which effectively gives approval, rather than do what is right and just. Such as in politics, we can often wink our eye at corruption just because it's simply we've come to expect it. If we don't attempt to confront corruption and bad behavior, it'll often just get worse. A classic example of this was when the Germans marched into the Rhineland before World War II. Even though the Treaty of Versailles prohibited it, the Allies effectively winked at it and did basically nothing. That winking continued through Hitler's rise to power and included the annexation of Austria and the invasion of Czechoslovakia. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland and the Allies suddenly got fuming. Because of their winks at the beginning instead of confronting it head on, in the end, it probably cost more lives and material. We often use little sayings to justify the winks, like different strokes for different folks, or whatever floats your boat, etc. Yes, there are times that situations demand tolerance of things that we might not like, but wisdom also helps us learn when we need to intervene for the greater good of the other person or for the common good. If a situation would indicate a bold reproof, we must think carefully and prayerfully, and with the Spirit's direction, intervene as He dictates. For example, parents might have trouble finding ways to respond to serious behavior issues with their children. While the proverbial spilt milk is nothing to be concerned about, bullying other kids, getting involved in drugs and alcohol, and even inappropriate sexual behavior certainly warrant action. Parents are not doing their child any good by blurring what God expects of them about right and wrong and good and evil. And we owe our children God's truth, not the darkness of ignorance, and certainly not for the sake of peace, which will certainly be short-lived. It's important that we state consequences for actions, but equally important that we follow through with those consequences when the actions are done. Children need boundaries, and it helps them grow and know the parameters they need to live within. Just remember to show them love as well. Keeping this in mind as well, a bold reproof does not mean that we attack the individual. Doing so could end up turning into wrath. Judging people as unworthy of love or fatally flawed can turn into another form of folly. When correcting anyone for bad behavior, we need to be thoughtful and exact in our reproof, and we direct it towards the behavior. And need to be thoughtful, directed at the behavior and sinful action. We must continue to cherish and value the person and show them we want what is best for them. That includes helping them remove that sin that harms them and those around them. We are always to love the person and recognize they have value. So, we see that anger can be justified and righteous. It is a good thing when that occurs. It also allows us to have the passion to make things right. Uncontrolled anger is another matter altogether. It can escalate things and destroy relationships, people's lives, and keep any redeemable correction from being a possibility. Ask God to help you and direct you as to how to have controlled, righteous anger at the appropriate times and situations. God wants us to draw close to Him, have an intimate relationship with Him, so that we can know His mind. And when we know His mind, we can do the actions that we are supposed to do to help other people in this situation. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed it and come back next time. God bless.